One of the other 13 current active SEC head coaches decided to take some shots at Tennessee yesterday. Who was it? What did he say? And was any of it warranted? All that coming up here on a Thursday, Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everybody, welcome into a Thursday edition of Locked On Vols. It is your team every single day. I'm your host, Derek Kane, at _Kaner on Twitter and at Locked On Vols. Thanks so much again, as always, for making Locked On Vols your first listen right here on wherever you listen to your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey app, or on YouTube. No video today. We'll get video back up hopefully tomorrow. If not tomorrow, definitely next week, so no worries there. But thank you so much for subscribing and following on YouTube as well. Got a fun show coming up today. Eli Drinkwitz, Missouri's head football coach. You guys know a little bit of my disdain for that human being, and we'll talk more about it here coming up in segment one. He had some interesting, unprompted comments about the Tennessee football program and the level 1 violations handed out during the notice of allegations. So we're going to hear that. We're going to get into that coming up here in just a few minutes. Saturday Down South, the 10 most critical questions Tennessee must answer in 2022. That's coming up in segment number 2. And then I had a conversation with Bill Hancock, the executive director of the College Football Playoff. That was at SEC Media Days last week. I'm going to play part of that conversation here on today's show. So that is the rundown. Buckle up. Let's get into it. This is Locked On Vols. So Eli Drinkwitz, he was a guest on the Jim Rome show. Jim Rome, CBS Sports Radio, located out in Los Angeles, California. A lot of people like Jim Rome. A lot of people, especially in this area in East Tennessee, hate Jim Rome. The sports animal where I work, I actually used to carry him way back in the day in middays, and gosh, the ratings, they were just atrocious. I know the Tri-Cities carries him a little bit up there in Kingsport, Johnson City, and Bristol, and a lot of people just don't like Jim Rome. But nonetheless, he is a Hall of Famer. He is very successful. I remember Jim Rome from back in my childhood. My first introduction to Jim Rome, not personally, but was watching the show Jim Rome is Burning on ESPN. I remember that from way back in the day. But he is a radio guy. He runs a very successful radio show, and I'm not a big fan of how he refers to his listeners as clones, but anyway, that's a side story. I had Eli Drinkwitz on to preview Missouri's upcoming season and to talk a little bit about the Missouri Tigers. And right off the get-go, it wasn't any talk about the Tigers, wasn't any talk about Missouri football, wasn't any talk about Eli Drinkwitz at all. It was talking about Tennessee. Give this a listen. About 90 seconds of Eli Drinkwitz just, kind of criticizing Tennessee a little bit. Listen for yourself. We'll talk about it.
I thought you were going to introduce my record, but with the latest allegations against Tennessee, let's hold up on what my record is because I expected to vacate some wins, and that's going to help my record a little bit. Okay?
Oh, man, this is getting better. This is getting so much better. Can I ask you, I wasn't necessarily going to go there, but you would be the beneficiary of that. Since you brought it up, can I get your reaction to the latest allegations against Tennessee?
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I got to question my wife's commitment to winning. I don't know how much she's committed if she's not engaging in some of these things. I didn't know that was fair play. So, we got to, it was a little bit surprising to see the in-depth nature of what was going on there. But I am sure glad that Tennessee was taking some ownership of it, and we'll see what the results are. But it's pretty interesting for sure.
My man, if I were you, I'd walk off right now, and then you can go down as the best guest ever. Eli, one more thought about that. It's one thing to say that I didn't know that my wife could get involved and help me cheat. Well, that's not what you said, but I'll say that. Even better, that she did she not used to have some sort of compliance responsibility where she had been previously as well? One thing to have the wife involved, but what if she was involved also in compliance and making sure that they follow the rules, allegedly? How much better is that make it?
I mean, it's pressure does crazy things to people, and there's a lot of pressure to win in the SEC. So I don't know, that's crazy.
So how about that? Quote, I thought you were going to introduce my record, but with the latest allegations against Tennessee, let's hold up on what my record might be because I expect them to vacate some wins, and that's going to help my record a little bit, okay? That's how he kind of introduce himself. And again, there was no question on, hey, Eli, what do you think about the allegations against Tennessee? Hey, Eli, what do you think about the notice of allegations going on against one of your fellow SEC East programs, Tennessee. No, it was Eli Drinkwitz that brought a little bit of fire into that. He goes on to say, I mean, me personally, I've got to question my wife's commitment to winning, I don't know how much she's committed if she's not engaging in some of these things. I didn't know that was fair play. Of course, that's in reference to Casey Pruitt, Jeremy Pruitt's wife, who used to work in compliance and was involved all over in the notice of allegations. He goes on to say, so it was a little bit surprising to see the in-depth nature that was going on there. I'm sure glad Tennessee was taking some ownership of it, and we'll see what the results are. It's pretty interesting for sure. That's Eli Drinkwitz, again, unprompted about the University of Tennessee. And, I mean, listen, some of it's warranted, right? I mean, I've said it countless times on the show. If you're going to break the rules, doesn't matter if it's Tennessee, doesn't matter if it's USC, doesn't matter if it's Mississippi State, Ole Miss, doesn't matter if it's Kansas, whoever. If you break the rules, you deserve to be a national punchline. Lord knows I've spent time on my radio shows, on my podcasts, on this platform. When someone cheats, I call them out. I mean, it just kind of is what it is. So, Tennessee, it was Jeremy Pruitt and his assistant coaches and obviously his wife as well, but, broke the rules. And so you've got to, reap the punishments that come with that. And part of that is being a national punchline. But here's my thing with Eli Drinkwitz. And I'm sure if you're new to the show, I kind of give you a background on my thoughts on Eli Drinkwitz. I think he's a good offensive mind. I think he's a decent head coach. I think he will never win at Missouri. Never, ever, ever will he win at Missouri simply because, quite frankly, Missouri doesn't care about football. I went there to cover an away game for Tennessee this year. It was an 11 a.m. local time kickoff, which I know that's kind of out of their control, but still, it was a bit ridiculous. Nobody goes to those games. What he was doing defensively was just atrocious last year, and I know that he made a change midseason on changing the defensive personnel and the defensive play caller, but defensively it was just awful. You've had some really good talent there. Drew Lock in particular, you won some games there. You had Connor Bazelak, who was a decent quarterback. You had a really nice All-American in Tyler Beatty last year. You couldn't win games. You went to overtime against Boston College. I don't think you can ever win at Missouri. Yet you're so irrelevant. Eli Drinkwitz has taken on the role of being a class clown in the Southeastern Conference. Remember SEC Media Days last year in Hoover, and he was, the punchline and trying to talk and spark, verbal jabs with Dan Mullen. I'm sorry, I know Dan Mullen's no longer the head football coach at Florida, but Dan Mullen was in a completely different atmosphere, completely different solar system than what Eli Drinkwitz is in, because Dan Mullen is a good coach, Dan Mullen wins football games, and Eli Drinkwitz simply does not. So Eli Drinkwitz has taken on the role of being class clown of the Southeastern Conference and, trying to be that guy in verbal jabs and be the ha-ha funny guy, because again, when you're not winning football games, you got to stay relevant somehow. He can't, he's done a decent job recruiting. I'm not going to say he can't recruit. He's actually done a pretty decent job in recruiting, but he's never going to finish top 10. He's never going to finish in the top 6 in the SEC. It just kind of is what it is. So, kind of what he said, sure, it's warranted. You just got to take it. Kind of like what we talked about yesterday on the show. Was all this worth it? The business decision to get rid of Jeremy Pruitt and to save anywhere from $10 to $12 million. Was it worth it? If you say it is, then you got to be okay with taking the national black eye and being the punchline to a lot of jokes. And that's what Eli Drinkwitz does. I just think it's kind of funny because you weren't asked about it. That was not prompted. You just kind of decided to say, hey, I'm going to go out here and I'm going to take some verbal jabs against a fellow SEC team that, quite frankly, beats the crap out of me the majority of the times we play. So, man, it just kind of was what it was. He has every right to say that. I just think at the end of the day, I'm sitting back laughing at Eli Drinkwitz because you are so irrelevant. No one gives a crap about your program in the Southeastern Conference. In fact, no one thinks your program deserves to be in the Southeastern Conference, yet here you are. So it just kind of comes a little twofold. Sure, it's fair, it's deserving, it is what it is. Also, you look like a clown. It's kind of like what Lane Kiffin says all the time. A lot of Lane, if you dig through all the BS, a lot of what Lane Kiffin says is actually some good stuff. But he just tops it on there with all these verbal insults and trolling fan bases and all that. And it's just like, okay, you're a clown. It's you're a clown. You look, what you're saying might be kind of right, and what you're saying I might agree with a little bit. But at the end of the day, you're a loser. And that's kind of what Eli Drinkwitz kind of comes across as me. So those are my personal opinions on Eli Drinkwitz. A lot of people are saying, what do you think about his comments? What do you think about his comments? Well, we played him here, and those are kind of my comments on that. It just kind of is what it is. Wasn't prompted. They weren't going to ask you about it, but you made it your mission to open things up and have a little dialogue about Tennessee. It's kind of embarrassing when you sit back and look at it. And again, if you want some retrospect, if you want to go back and say, the end of all this with the internal investigation and the NCAA investigation and the level 1 violations of the notice of allegations and yada, 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 we covered that the last couple of episodes. Was it worth it? That's for you to decide. But at the end of the day, where Missouri is right now with Eli Drinkwitz, where Tennessee is right now with Josh Heupel, I mean, it's not even a comparison. It is not even a comparison. So you want to make fun of a program in the university that's kind of going through the ringer right now, yet even despite all that, that same program, that same university is in a much better position to win in the Southeastern Conference right now than you are in year, 3 or 4 at the helm? Year 4, entering year 4. Eli Drinkwitz, you are a class clown and you are a loser. That is all I got to say about that. Coming up next, Saturday Down South, 10 critical questions Tennessee must answer before the 2022 season begins. A friend of the show, Mark Nagy, wrote that, and we'll get into what he has to say here in just one moment. BetOnline.net is the fastest, easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sporting events, the number one source for all the odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every single league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information. From live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts, they've got you completely covered. Head on over today or use your mobile device at betonline.net to learn about all the latest trends and all the action. BetOnline, it is where the game starts. Welcome back into your Thursday edition of Locked On Vols. I am your host, Eric Kane. Big thank you guys for hanging out with us here today and making Locked On Vols your first listen. Again, no video today. We'll hopefully get it back up tomorrow. If not, definitely next week for the start of football camp. Got some technical issues, but appreciate you guys for still tuning in on YouTube and listening via. Let's be honest with you, you're not watching my face anyway. If you're watching on YouTube, you probably got it on your the phone while you're going into work, or maybe at the office is on one of your tabs. So you got to hear these glorious vocal cords that are getting better as the week goes on. Mind you, I want a little pat on my back right now, getting a little bit better. I have not, at the time of this recording here in segment number 2, had to stop and edit any coughing, so that is a win as we work our way through the week. Hey, Saturday Down South put out a cool little article on the 10 most critical questions that Tennessee must answer entering the 2022 season. A friend of the show, Mark Nagy, formerly a sportscaster at Channel 6 for many, many years here in Knoxville. Now he's the director of the communications division over at TDOT, but he still writes a little bit, gets a sports fix with Saturday Down South. And he came up with 10 questions that Tennessee must answer. I thought we'd go through these quickly, and I give you my take on all of those. Number 1, will Tennessee finally get a win over one of the big 3? Of course, the big 3 is Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. Nagy writes it's the 3 biggest rivals, 15 straight losses to Alabama, 14 losses in the last 15 meetings with Florida, 5 straight losses to Georgia. Can you buck any of those trends? The best one available, in my opinion, would be against Florida. We've told you why before. Of course, you got a first-year head coach. Take advantage of it. Tennessee's roster, there might not be as much talent still that's compared to Florida, but I think you have more developed talent in the system that you're running, and you got a good quarterback, and you got some playmakers. So go out and get that win over Florida this year. I would agree with that. Number 2, who will be the backup quarterback? Well, I can go and tell you this right now. It's going to be Joe Milton. Taven Jackson, they were impressed with him during spring, and of course it was just his first 15 practices when he still should have been as a senior in high school, but coming here early and enrolling early and all that, he wasn't bad or anything. But he's going to be a true freshman. Joe Milton, this is going to be his 5th year as a college football player. He has started games in 2 Power 5 conferences, the SEC and the Big Ten. Joe Milton, by and large, will be your backup quarterback. I can tell you that right now. Number 3, will Tennessee top 7 wins? Most lines, including BetOnline.net's got Tennessee, the over-under set at 7.5. Pound, hammer the over. So can Tennessee top 7 wins? In my opinion, absolutely. Tennessee's good enough, in my opinion, to win 9 regular season games. I'm not picking that. I'm picking 8 wins. You guys know I'm very conservative in that regard. But hammer the over, because Tennessee certainly could win 9 regular season games. So that's what I would say about number 3. Number 4, according to Saturday Down South's article from Mark Nagy, will the Vols defense establish some depth? Great question, man. That is a big reason why Tennessee lost some games, in my opinion, last year. You had no depth at linebacker. You had no depth at safety. You couldn't get after the quarterback consistently from a 4-man rush. We'll see if that last question will be answered this year. I think it can be, with Tyler Barron and Byron Young both playing on the field at the same time. Barron now at his 265, 270 frame with a hand in the dirt. I like that a little bit more. You've still got your edge rushers and a pretty good depth on the defensive line up front. You feel better about linebacker this year with Juwan Mitchell back into the fold. Elijah Herring emerging as a guy that's going to play a little bit. William Mohan's going to get back into the swing of things. Jackson Hanna, a walk-on transfer from Nebraska, is going to be there for some depth purposes. So you feel a little bit better in terms of your depth at linebacker than you did last year. And then at the defensive back, you've got so many different options. It's just who's going to play where. That's the biggest question. That should have been one of the top 10 here is who's going to play where. And there's one kind of on it here later on. We'll get to it in a moment. But you know who your safeties are likely going to be. Who's going to be the nickelback? Who's going to be the two cornerbacks? You've got names. Can any of those guys step up and separate themselves? We will find out. Number 5, who will be Cedric Tillman's wingman? Yeah, Cedric Tillman was great. You know why? Because he had Velus Jones. The two combined for 126 catches, 1,888 yards, and 19 touchdowns. That was the Velus Jones and Cedric Tillman's combined receiving stats in 2021. One was a third-round pick now with the Chicago Bears. The other one is back at Tennessee. Clearly, Cedric Tillman's a good player, but what makes Cedric Tillman so good is having a wingman in the slot. What makes Cedric Tillman so good is having an outside threat opposite of Cedric Tillman on the other side of the offensive formation. Who will be those two guys to step up? Will Brew McCoy step up? Will Jalen Hyatt step up? We will see. Number 6, will Jeremy Banks lead the Vols in tackles again? Probably, because he plays in the middle and he is a tackling machine. I think he can get even better. Jeremy Banks in the box is good Jeremy Banks. Jeremy Banks forced to play out of the box, not so good. Hips are not great. Learned that when he played running back a few years ago. In coverage, he's not fantastic, but in the box, and you play this nickel 4-2-5 essentially to where it keeps those guys in the box more and more, I would say so. I mean, if it's not going to be Jeremy Banks, who's it going to be? Aaron Beasley, was second on the team last year with, I think, 84 tackles, and Jeremy Banks had 128. Pretty wide disparity there. So Jeremy Banks will absolutely lead the team in tackles again. Who gets the most rushes? Well, 1A in the backfield is going to be Jabari Small. 1B, or B if you want to call it that, would be Jalen Wright. Number 3 would probably be Justin Williams-Thomas. Number 4, could it be Dylan Sampson? Could it be Laneith Whitehead? You've got some guys. You're kind of relatively thin in that room, but you do have some options. You can go about 4 or 5 deep. Without a big transfer running back coming in, it's going to be a Jabari Small, Jalen Wright, Justin Williams-Thomas show, in my opinion. So I think those 3 guys will get the majority of the carries, and I think Jabari Small, though he's healthy, will get the majority of the, or though if he is healthy, I should better say, will get the majority of those carries. But he dealt with a shoulder issue all last season. Durability is an issue there. So it's a pretty good question. Will it be Justin Williams-Thomas at the end of the season that carries the football more? Will it be Hendon Hooker, who carried the football a team high 166 times last year? Keep in mind, though, some of those sacks factor in there as well. So Hendon Hooker will very much be a part of the run game. But I think Justin Williams-Thomas, as the year goes on, needs to get more and more and more carries once he proves himself. Number 8, who replaces Alontae Taylor? Well, he was clearly the team's best defensive back in terms of the cornerback position. A second-round draft pick to the New Orleans Saints. You saw the struggles Tennessee underwent in the Music City Bowl. Now they had a bunch of cornerbacks out. I recognize that. You guys know me. I think if Kamal Hadden is healthy, he's one of your corners. Warren Burrell's played a whole lot of football. Will he be a starting cornerback? What about, will Andre Turrentine get a look at corner? Will he be safety? Will Christian Charles get a look at corner? Will he be safety? Will Brandon Turnage get a look at corner, or will he be star? I don't know. These are the questions that I'm looking forward to getting answered the more we go on through camp. So I'm intrigued to see what that looks like. Cornerback is the biggest question mark to me entering this season, because again, if we move on to number 9, who replaces Cade Mays at right tackle, we know the tackle plan. We don't know what the plan is at cornerback. So Kamal Hadden, Warren Burrell, Andre Turrentine, Brandon Turnage, Christian Charles, Deshaun Rucker, Desmond Williams, all those guys, Christian Harrison, all those guys could have a shot at play corner, but who will it be? We'll have to find out. Number 9, who replaces Cade Mays at right tackle? Well, from the looks of it, it looks like Darnell Wright is going to play right tackle like he did his first 2 years here on Rocky Top, and at left tackle, that's going to be the other position. So the way that this question should have been phrased is, who will replace Cade Mays as an offensive tackle? Gerald Mincey came into spring. Didn't get a whole lot of run because he was dealing with a foot injury. Was a reserve offensive tackle for Florida. He is a left tackle through and through. You have Dane Davis, who played the majority of the season when Cade Mays was out last year, who has got tons and tons of reps under his belt now, and he's a friend of the show. But the guy I'm picking to play offensive tackle this year, and we'll have to see how camp goes, but the guy that was the most impressive in spring practice is J.J. Crawford, the junior college transfer. He started a right tackle in the Music City Bowl. He had a really, really nice spring. I say J.J. Crawford might be that guy, but again, we will have to see. And then finally, according to Mark Nagy's Saturday Down South's 10 most critical questions Tennessee must answer before 2022 begins, will Josh Heupel give any bulletin board material? I can tell you right now, absolutely no. Josh Heupel is not Jimbo Fisher. Josh Heupel is not Lane Kiffin. Josh Heupel is not Eli Drinkwitz. Josh Heupel is not Nick Saban. Josh Heupel is not any of those guys, and certainly he's not won as much as those guys, but that's just not his personality. Josh Heupel, once the season starts, he will get up there to his media availabilities and he will talk, and he won't give you anything. He has mastered how to talk to the media as a head football coach during the season. Out of season, he'll tell you a lot of stuff. In season, he won't tell you a thing. But will Josh Heupel give any bulletin board material? Absolutely not. I will not envision that whatsoever. Good stuff there from Mark Nagy. Saturday Down South, the 10 most critical questions Tennessee must answer in 2022. Go ahead and check it out for yourself and reply in the YouTube questions or the comment section, or DM me at _Caner at Locked On Vols, anything you want to add to that. All right, coming up here to conclude a Thursday show, I had a sit-down conversation with the executive director of the College Football Playoff. His name is Bill Hancock. That is coming up next, right here on Locked On Vols. Got a real treat here. I'm here with Bill Hancock. He's the executive director of the College Football Playoff Committee, and really exciting stuff. Of course, we always talk about the future of college football and how conference expansion is now a topic nowadays, but it all comes back to the playoff system. And right now it's been a 4-team playoff system. I think it's been very successful for quite some time. It's a whole lot of fun. But, here in the next couple of years, that's obviously going to continue to be a conversation of potentially changing. Where do you like about the 4-team, playoff system right now, and kind of what your committee's been able to do the last couple of years?
Well, I'm so glad we have a playoff, first of all. 4 has been working.
Yeah.
Our selection committee has gotten the best 4 teams, in my opinion, all 8 years. We brought new fans into college football as they've enjoyed following the bracket that we have. There's great incentive, of course, to get in that top 4. Team 5 is always going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
I was director of the NCAA men's basketball tournament before I came over here. Spent 16 years doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And in that world, back when I was there, Team 65 was very disappointed.
Yep.
So that goes with the territory.
I think that no matter where the number is, you're exactly right. If it's 8, Team 9. If it's 12, Team 13, whatever the case may be. Do you see a way potentially in the future that it would expand to where you can find it equal to where you can have some automatic qualifiers, but also enough at-large, bids to where it would be, because the team from the SEC, it's going to have a couple of teams from in Big Ten as well. It's going to have some of the best teams in the country. But if it misses out on an automatic qualifier, maybe it's left out of the pack. Where's the line there and trying to find the right avenue to go towards?
Yeah, that's the key, is finding the right balance.
Yeah.
We had a committee who looked at potential new formats, a committee of conference commissioners and the Notre Dame AD. They were appointed by our board, which is university presidents, who said, we think we should look at adding more teams. And their proposal was for 12-team tournament. You read about all this. So
oh, yeah.
I'm not telling you anything you don't know. With 6 conference champions and 6 at-large teams. And when I first heard about 12, I thought, wait, 12? I really hadn't thought through it. But over the ensuing months, it's dawned on me that 12 makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
6 at-large spots is really good. Now we have 4 at-large spots, and they're all at-large.
Yeah.
And some of the talk about 8 teams has been 6 automatics and 2 at-larges. Well, I don't know why we'd want to get fewer at-large spots than we have now. We've learned that at-large positions are really, really good. And so that's, to me, the beauty of 12. One of the beauties of 12 is that having those 6 at-larges.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Because again, it's about the quality of competition, and sometimes you have a team that maybe came up short in a conference championship, or maybe week 10, or an Iron Bowl situation. I know 2017, that kind of played into a factor. Ultimately, it worked itself out, but still, Auburn potentially could have been a 2-loss team in the college football playoff. So, any way you want to spin it too. And I don't know if you can answer this. If you can't, that's totally okay. But with the discussions this past winter, now how close was this to being a deal in terms of in the next 3 seasons when this plays out, it might expand, and coming to an agreement just a couple of months ago, and of course the tables now have kind of paused.
We were looking at trying to expand potentially before this contract runs out in 2025.
Yeah,
and I knew that would be a long shot because that had to be unanimous. To change any contract, all the parties must agree. Mm-hmm. And the conferences are all parties of the contract. So everybody, in essence, had a blackball. And 3 of the conferences exercised their right to say, it's not right for us. And so to say how close it was, 3 conferences weren't ready to move yet.
So essentially not very close. and then with that too, say it is a 12-team, college football playoff. Then the questions come into saying, okay, well that could potentially add some more games, or how many teams get a bye, or conference championships. Do you see things if you expand the college football playoff? Do you see things having to change prior to that? Like, will conference championship games go away? Is it going to be up? I guess it's still up to the conference right now if you even want to have a championship game. Do you see anything in that regard affecting maybe a 12-team college football playoff?
No, I really don't. 2 things. Regular season college football is the best thing we have going for us in college athletics.
Yeah.
It's the best. Nothing brings people back to campus like a football weekend. So I don't think anybody wants to mess with a regular season. And then conference championship games are a very important part of the conference's contracts with television.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And every conference does its own thing in terms of television agreements. So there would never be any kind of national move to eliminate conference championship games. We would be adding with a 12-team tournament, potentially 2 more games for 2 teams. That's not and 1 more game over what we have now.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of additional football. People have been talking about, you're going to add all these games. Well, you have to remember that the bowl games those teams would not play in bowl games.
Yep.
If they're in the playoff. So, but that has been a thing that one conference raised. A couple of conferences talked about. Do we want to play extra games? I think that's taken care of by looking at a whole calendar review of college football. Look at spring practice. Look at the reporting date in the fall. Gosh, even look at maybe shortening the games a little bit to eliminate some of those collisions.
Yeah.
If you can eliminate 10 plays per game, well, over a season, you're eliminating a whole game. If you think about it, whole game worth of collisions. So that really does the trick of eliminating a game right there. If we could get rules changes to speed up the game a little bit.
Great stuff here from Bill Hancock. He is the executive director of the College Football Playoff Committee. Thank you so much for your time. I know you visit our radio station all the time, so very gracious with your time as always, and awesome stuff. Thanks so much.
Great talking to you. Thanks.
Awesome.
Really good stuff there from Bill Hancock. I really appreciate him taking the time, stopping by the booth on Radio Row last week in Atlanta at the SEC Media Days, and talking a little college football playoff. I mean, that is a guy that is the director of the people, the committee, that make the decisions on what to do with the college football playoff. So what a guest. What an awesome guy to talk to in terms of kind of where they stand right now and, of course, the future of the game. All right, that's going to do it here for this edition of Locked On Vols. Guys, I appreciate you for hanging out with us today. We've got one more show coming up, and then it is the start of Tennessee's football season. Camp 2022. It begins on Sunday, and can't wait to bring you guys coverage. Audio, video, anything I get my hands on Monday's episode. And, of course, with camp beginning, I'll be out there at practices, and we'll be ready to roll. So, guys, thank you so much for electing to spend some of your time with us here on Locked On Vols. You will never understand how much it means to me. You could be literally doing anything in the world but you're listening with us here on Locked On Vols. Can't thank you enough for that. Hey, same time, same place tomorrow. We'll do it again. Check out Locked On SEC. Make that your second listen behind Locked On Vols, of course, which is your first listen and watch every single day. Guys, enjoy the rest of your Thursday, and we'll be back here for a Friday show.